As a former pothead, I consider marijuana to be a much more harmful drug than people consider it to be. The thing about marijuana is not that it's physically harmful. It's mentally and emotionally harmful. It encourages you to use it habitually. It might not be physically addicting, but it's certainly highly psychologically addicting. How many people do you know who use marijuana casually? The problem is that people abuse it frequently, and it causes them to suffer or atrophy in other areas of their lives, or they use it to cope with something else they're not willing to confront. For me, I used weed as an excuse to not participate in society. Rather than see my friends, I would just get stoned and turn off my phone. I wouldn't talk to anyone or go out. I was afraid to go out, so I used weed as an excuse not to. This caused me to have low self-esteem. I thought of myself as a loser pothead, because I was. I think many potheads feel this way, but they would never admit it to anyone else. But once I finally decided to drop it once and for all, my life has improved so drastically. I felt like a human again, like a member of society. And I realized that it hardly even did anything for me anyway. It turned me into a stupid person. I'm not stupid. I think the damage that marijuana does is complex, but significant. I think the culture surrounding it and its reputation as a safe drug is extremely dangerous. To quote the great and wise Randy Marsh, "Well, Stan, the truth is marijuana probably isn't gonna make you kill people, and it most likely isn't gonna fund terrorism, but, well, son, pot makes you feel fine with being bored. And it's when you're bored that you should be learning some new skill or discovering some new science or being creative. If you smoke pot, you may grow up to find out that you aren't good at anything." Edit. This thread really blew up, so I would add on, if you feel you're in a similar situation to mine, my best advice is to reconnect with friends and focus on your abilities, skills, and talents. When I quit, I focused more on my creative writing, and that built my self-esteem like crazy. I realized that the feeling of fulfillment and happiness I got from doing this every day was far greater than the meager feeling of being high that I got from marijuana. I'm now on track to finish my first novel by the end of the year. A lot of comments are talking about how moderation is key and not everyone uses it the same. My question is, why use this drug at all? What does it help you with? And for whatever problem it is there another, more organic way you could solve this problem? For example, if you have anxiety, maybe you can work on therapy or confronting this issue and trying to get some closure. If you feel the need to get high every day, ask yourself, do I enjoy life without this drug? And if not, try to figure out why that is and what could help to change it. The best and worst part of weed is it makes you feel content, but actually makes you complacent and apathetic. Also a former stoner. Once you drop the wake and bake routine from college and treat smoking like an after-work beer, I swear you'll be more functional in society. I used to be high out of my mind all day and would get nothing done. Gradually started to only smoke after the AM, and now it's only after work. Now, if it's the weekend and it's pouring rain, I may have a stoner day, but those are so few and far in between now, it makes them fun now. Stay busy and life will find a way. Big edit, my first post to ever go gold on Reddit. Very humbled and much respect. I hope this post helps not just up but anyone that feels like weed may not be helping them the way it could or should be. It's all about moderation, my friends. Question: does anyone feel weed makes the dumber? I found that when I smoked in the evening, when I went to work the next day, my brain was only half working. It was harder to stay focused, I would stumble my words more often, and my memory was worse. These weren't long-term effects, I just wasn't as sharp the day after smoking. Moderation is key. It's too easy to get stuck into a daily shitty habit and having to suffer through the side effects. I believe moderation and discipline is key. If you feel best without it, that's great. Certain drugs are just not for some people. I totally agree with you about marijuana being mentally and harmful, especially taking it as a teenager where your brain has not yet fully developed. Moderation, balance, and discipline are key factors. As a smoker I can honestly say, any smoker who says there aren't negatives to smoking pot are just lying to themselves. Harmful to your lungs. Can slow your ability to process information even when not high. Can have adverse effects on mental health. Some people it's a huge benefit, others not so much. The best thing I ever did was remove my need to smoke. I work a lot, and just forget sometimes, and I distinctly remember when I was a chronic user it would be almost all I thought about. Now it's maybe one dab a day if that. Pothead here. Inclined to agree here. I smoke daily and with lockdown and working at home have adopted to smoking when I work. I function, I get shit done, but I equally feel like I'm on autopilot when all of a sudden it's 1 month later. I hate that it allows me to disconnect from people so easily when I thrive off engagement with people. Sounds like I'm in a pickle. I've seen it change people over the years mentally. As long as it doesn't hinder other areas of your life I don't see the harm. If it stops you from working, socializing, educating yourself or other important such things, it has to go. I agree. I grew up in Southern California and started smoking pot at 12. It did nothing good for me and the people I hung around with all ended up doing nothing with their lives. There used to be a PSA commercial and it showed a bunch of teenagers, then later a bunch of middle-aged dudes who were still living at home. It said, "What happens when you smoke pot? Nothing does. That's the problem." Or something along those lines. It's true. Marijuana has probably halted a lot of lives. There is medical evidence linking continuing copious cannabis use and the onset of schizophrenia. It's not clear to me if how many cases of schizophrenia developed after the patient had already stopped using cannabis. Hello, pothead here. I completely agree, it is probably the most psychologically addictive as it's definitely the most accepted drug. If for example, I was to start smoking meth instead of weed, all day every day, it would be far more shunned upon by society/friends/family etc. Basically, it's harmful because you think it's not opposed to other lifestyle drugs. Edit, I'm referring to illegal drugs here. Agree 100%. There was a period of a few weed-filled years of my life where I had trouble holding on to more than 1 or 2 pieces of information at a time. Everything revolved around weed and finding ways to smoke without outing myself. I destroyed my self-esteem over it. I've been weed-free for 3 years now. A few other bad habits went with it, like video games and porn. You can get by on weed and people tend to think of you as a childlike novelty. But that isn't what life is about. I'm a much better and more effective person without it in my life. I've worked with kids and adults who smoke loads of cannabis and it amazes me when people think it's only a plant. Yes, there are some great medicinal purposes for the components, but it can be so damaging. Also, in the last 10 to 15 years the cannabis has got so much stronger and the chemical, name escapes me, that balances it out has been reduced, so it's even more harmful. Generally not an opinion that goes down well on here, so thank you. As the body has its own endogenous cannabinoid system and you do get withdrawals when quitting, sleep disturbances, irritability, sweating, anxiety etc., I just can't wrap my head around people saying weed is non-addictive. I think there is absolutely a way to have a healthy relationship with weed. I refused to touch the stuff until I was like 21, and then within a couple months of somewhat regular smoking, my mental health was vastly improved. Sure, you can overdo it, just like anything else, but if you set guidelines for your use, only after 5, only on weekends, etc., then I don't see what harm it does. Just being able to smoke and take a break from my constant, swirling anxiety genuinely changed my life and has made a lot of other things seem more possible. I honestly agree with this post wholeheartedly. My life has been completely altered by weed. Ever since starting to use it habitually, I overanalyze everything, especially social interactions, giving me anxiety in ways I had never felt before in my life. And then from isolating myself from my friends and family I indulged in a lot of self-hatred and just really struggled to stay in reality. I'm still smoking weed on and off every now and then, but smoking it turns me into some really dark and hateful person, at least towards myself, and I know that's not everyone's experience, but yet I do agree it's not as safe as people make it seem.